DQR, and his other two co-founders, Marco and Marcos, are founders of Genesis Mining, the largest mining company in the world. Thank you so much for joining us, Kristian. So, would you be able to tell us briefly the relationship between DQR and Genesis Mining?
Sure, it's a very complex relationship. I know Marcos way before Genesis Mining was even created. We were actually purchasing Bitcoin directly from Marco, and we were purchasing it at such a frequency that Marco actually said, "Are you interested in joining us and maybe start mining?" And it was a small group of friends that started mining, and that turned into Genesis Mining. Years later, I joined again with Marco and said, you know, we've made mining accessible, why don't we make cryptocurrencies accessible? And that's how DQR was established, yes.
So you were basically purchasing so much Bitcoin, he asked you to join the company.
To mine with them, actually. I mean, mining was at that time a group of friends that were allocating resources and trying to mine together.
And how much Bitcoin was that?
It was I think 5 or 6 years ago, but it was, I think, in the hundreds. We were buying in a coffee shop, at bars. That's how we bought Bitcoin back then. And
in coffee shop and through ATMs?
Not through ATMs. It was actually the Marcos used to come to the bar, to the shops, and distribute it. And we used to drink and buy the Bitcoin. It felt like a drug deal. There was not many exchanges back then, and they were mining privately, and they asked, why don't you join us and why don't we offer this to the world?
I mean, is there anything in particular, you said it felt like a drug deal, is there anything in particular that made you want to buy these Bitcoins?
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of the great things was the philosophy behind blockchain and the ability for the technology to reach people outside of the financial system. And this was what inspired us to invest in the most riskiest, volatile asset class. And we decided that, okay, if we're going to do that, why don't we try and take that technology even further?
That is interesting, certainly, and amazing. What about DQR in particular?
Sure.
But
how long? DQR is split into 3 categories. There's 3 pillars. One is, DQR stands for Digital Quantitative Research, so the founders are all PhDs. So we focus on education and raising the awareness of cryptocurrencies. The second pillar is on trading, but not traditional trading. We're looking at trying to make cryptos more accessible, easier to use, and we offer an index token, which is one token that represents the entire crypto marketplace. And the third pillar is our foundation, where we have decided to be a social example to the community, where every time someone trades on our platforms, we actually give a percentage of the profit back to the community, and we have our decentralized foundation as well.
So you've mentioned the first one, education.
Yeah.
How does it logistically play out? Who do you educate and how?
We educate 3 different sectors. One is the traditional sector, institutional sector. We explain the power of blockchain to increase efficiency, transparency, that the technology can be used to accelerate some of their legacy systems. The second area is students, so we work with the University of Malta as well as in Munich. We try to introduce blockchain education into the curriculum. And obviously the third area is the retail market, on understanding that the cryptocurrencies themselves are a protocol, they're not just an investment, and that protocol can be expanded to do many different things.
And what about Malta? You mentioned Malta.
Yeah.
Is there a particular reason why you decided to set it up here?
Sure. I mean, with the Genesis Group, we're spread around the globe, and we were looking at Switzerland, and we're looking at Liechtenstein, as well as Malta. When we arrived in Malta, the energy of the people and the openness to have dialogue really impressed us. This was around 2017 November. And we said, okay, maybe this is the island that's going to spark the change. A small little place with a small population that we can pilot a lot of these programs and work with the regulators and government. So we decided to move our operation here. And since then, it has been an incredible journey. The government has come up with a new regulation. They're very open to discuss the benefits of the technology, not just for businesses, but also to the broader community. And Malta can be an example for Europe. So we're very excited to be here.
So, and what about the future of blockchain then, or cryptocurrency?
In general,
Yeah.
I think blockchain is evolving, and it's spreading obviously into the institutional sector. But what we're going to see in the upcoming future is the technology going beyond just finance. We're going to see the technology being applied to things like digitalized identity, looking at how we can tokenize some of the fundamental reporting and auditing functions in the community. We could even see the technology bridging into economic zones that don't actually have access to financial services.
Like which ones?
For example, I mean, the proximity of Malta to Africa, for example, is a great example there. So you're still in the EU, but you can have a reach to Africa. So we're looking at zones that are completely underbanked or unbanked, and how we can deploy that technology to actually give these individuals economic voice. So that is as simple as a solar panel and a smartphone that connects them to the global community.
And so we're talking cryptocurrency here?
Cryptocurrencies, we're talking about maybe even these communities using tokens as a way of collateralizing their commodities, or as a way of saying I have ownership to this land, and then from there using it as a kind of a credit basis. We're talking about even communication protocols and so forth. Yeah.
I think mining in general has got a lot of voice, and we hear a lot about mining and what miners do. Just to give it a bit more perspective, we talked about Genesis Mining, the largest company, or possibly the largest. How big is that?
Genesis Mining, through Marcos, I'll speak on their behalf now, but Genesis Mining is one of the largest mining providers for Ethereum network. They were there prior to the actual release of that token. Their focus has always been originally to mine the old coins and convert them back into Bitcoin. That was the original strategy back then. So they're very strong on the GPU side of mining. They have grown incredibly. They've spread through all of the major continents, whether that's in the US, China, even Iceland and Europe. And they control quite a lot of the offerings to the customer. That model of, okay, you want to mine with us, why don't you share that and make mining accessible for the average person? And that philosophy has allowed them to grow to very large size right now.
So how do you do that? How do you make mining accessible to the average person?
Yes. By offering contracts like the story with me and Marco, by offering a contract to participate on their data centers. So they have very large data centers. You can purchase a contract, get access to that allotment of hardware, and then mine with Genesis. And they take the hassle out of the maintenance, the control, the distribution of the computational power. They give that back to the people to decide what they should do and what currencies they should mine.
So basically, the way you work is you have a mine in a location like Iceland. For example, if I'm not wrong, you've got a mine in Iceland as well, Genesis. So, and you outsource the actual mining operation to that mine, so it's local people working there.
Essentially, you give the people an ability to mine with Genesis, essentially. So a certain amount of hardware is allocated to customers, and customers don't have to worry about the whole setup and maintenance of that hardware.
In terms of, so would you, is that, I think like normally someone would look at that and say, that's like printing money, international.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
It's sort of like that, right? But the miners do something even more critical to the ecosystem. They create the foundations and they maintain those foundations of the blockchain. So they basically do an enormous service to the community by allowing and processing transactions and allowing other people to build applications on top of that protocol. And very similar to DQR, we took that same paradigm and said, okay, why don't we make the cryptocurrencies themselves more accessible? Why don't we educate people? Why don't we become an example for social change and have a foundation at the center and give that back to the community and let the community decide how those resources should be allocated. So the Genesis DQR families share the original philosophies and values of blockchain.
Sure. I think we'll definitely be following you really closely at BloxLive. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a busy day. Thank you for taking your time.
Thank you very much.
You're watching BloxLive.